Your refusal to bulk is leaving serious gains on the table, and right now, I'll be sharing 3 compelling reasons why you just need to gain some darn weight. Starting with the topic of time. I typically recommend a 6 to 9 month bulk followed by a 3-month cutting period. Of course, that could change depending on your goals and how fluffy you get. If you dirty bulk, which I don't recommend, yeah, you might have to cut sooner and it might even have to be longer. So, provided you did it correctly, a lean bulk where you don't become fat as that's the time frame we're talking about. In many cases, that's going to be winter bulking followed by summer cutting, though the reversal applies as well. Don't be married to the seasons. And at the same time, if you're enjoying the gains that you're making, don't artificially stop the bulk just because you got to be lean for X date. At the end of the day, your goals come first and you know what you want, which also applies for my fellow perma-bulkers, which you may claim that you are, but at some point, you're going to drop that weight and you freaking know it. So, back to the topic. When you go through these distinct phases, the goals are laser focused. It's either I'm going to get stupid lean and shredded or get buff out of my darn mind. There's no second guessing, no wishy-washiness, because let's keep it real, you don't want to waste your bulk. And I actually made a full video on this subject. If you're in a calorie surplus, you're not going to try to maintain certain muscles. You're going to take advantage of the additional food. Otherwise, that fat gain would have been for nothing. So that's why these extreme perspectives usually guarantee success. Anyway, as you go through multiple bulks and cuts, you'll start to notice something very interesting. And that is your weights will never look the same on either side. Here's what I mean. At the peak of your bulk, you'll be leaner when heavier. And at the peak of your cut, you'll be heavier when leaner. Feel free to replay that part if you need to. Basically, you're actually gaining real quality muscle, which you don't notice right away, but it's only at the top of the mountain, followed by you come back down, where you realize your base has improved. And even though you might lose some of that muscle when you cut, the net amount that's acquired is still higher than if you were to just stay in a maintenance phase. And the thing is, that time frame is better. Because some guys are going to point out, well, can't I just stay lean year round, add a little bit of extra calories, and my weight will go up ever so slightly throughout the years? The answer is yes, you could do that, but it's significantly harder and inferior. But at the same time, you going through bulks and cuts would have a similar effect in the end, but you would actually be a little bit heavier. So to use myself as an example, the first time I cut, I ended up at 160 pounds. Years later, that same level of body fat was 165 pounds. How is that possible? Well, I put on 5 pounds of muscle. And when we talk about bulking, which is the other extreme, me being in the 180s now looks like the 170s. I still have some decent definition, and most importantly, my face is not super fat. And that's how I know that the lean tissue is legit. Because one can make the argument that as you acquire more muscle, the fat will distribute through a larger surface area. And then there's a topic of muscle maturity. So maybe you can get so jacked that you just look leaner. But the face doesn't lie. If you could still see your jawline, if you don't look like a freaking moon, even though you're a lot heavier, that tells the entire story. So when I look at the visuals plus the numbers plus the time frame, it all maths out flawlessly. Your base muscle is always going up, even though your weight is constantly fluctuating. And when you return to your initial weight, you're going to be stronger. So again, 2018, I did my first double body weight bench press. I was in the low 160s, carved out of my damn mind, not cutting at this point. Last year, when I got shredded, I was able to do more than a double body weight bench press. Why? Because I benched 4 plates when I was fluffier. So even though you're going to see a drastic decline, you're still going to have more muscle than if you never did that bulk. Do you understand what I'm saying? So me being single digit, depleted, basically no muscle glycogen, tired, almost died by having super low blood pressure and passing out, just being in my weakest state ever. Like a state that's so horrific I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. A state like that, I was still stronger than I was in 2018, being at a healthy, lean body weight. What does that say? That you're not just a fat guy who looks big, but when you get lean, there's actually no muscle. No. If you bulk, you're going to gain the most muscle. So that's why you got to stop fearing weight gain. This is the true path to long-term recompositioning. Your body fat will always be lower whether you're bulking or cutting, which then leads me on to my second point. Bulking is objectively superior for gaining strength and mass. There's not a single person who's going to tell me otherwise. And it's always the same people who aren't that strong or big saying, yeah, you can make optimal gains while burning fat and gaining muscle simultaneously. Good luck doing that as an advanced or elite lifter, which a lot of you guys can end up at if you do things correctly. Most of these people are early intermediates, just spinning their wheels. They don't realize what they're actually capable of fucking doing. Meaning they haven't experienced the legit plateaus yet. Because I can tell you for an absolute fact that I would have never benched 405 last year if it were not for me bulking. It wasn't gonna happen. And when I look at some of my peers who stay shredded year round, they're stubborn about putting on some fat, it freaking shows in their physique. Their weight doesn't change, and their bench press and other exercises stall. Like there's one guy I can think of right now. I don't like name dropping people, but he's a little bit older than me and has comparable bench press strength, yet it hasn't budged in years. So when I was in the low 300s, he was already at 350, 365. And I was like, wow, by the time I get there, he's for sure going to be in the low 400s. Turns out that never happened. And the reason is that he's always between 6 and 10% body fat. And is it then a coincidence that when he goes from lean to shredded, which aren't the same thing, by the way, the body weight doesn't really change that much? It's been stagnant over the last 5 years. You tell me, is that a natural limit or refusal to bulk? This is a person that could have gone beyond my level of strength. And mind you, he has pretty good genetics as well. So if it's not working for him on a performance level and actually gaining some muscle that's reflected in your body, like what the f are you doing? And what I can tell you is that all the best naturals have gone through bulks. Many of us dirty bulk, which we often regret. But when it's time to get fucking serious, I'm going to put on 2 inches on my legs. I'm going to put on an inch on my chest, which I actually freaking did, by the way. The answer is always the same. You bulk. You go through a phase where you're going to put on some fat because you don't care. Heck, this is what I did as a novice lifter, and I had no troubles. Not because I'm some freaking specimen. Bro, I went from 143 to 170 in my first year. And even though I gained a lot of fat, I still look lean by the end of it because as I pointed out earlier, your body fat will scale according to how much lean muscle you put on. So it's like, are you serious about gaining muscle or not? If you're happy with your physique, you enjoy the aesthetics, then fine. Be as lean as you want. But if you're not playing, you're like, I'm going to make some fucking gains. Then you know what the answer is. And that's why I went from shredded as to a rather healthy, semi-fluffy state. And next time I cut back again, I'm going to be leaner. I'm not going to be 146. And keep in mind, that's the absolute most depleted state I was able to reach. It's going to be 150 looking the exact same way. You know what I'm saying? Like, gaining muscle is already hard. Why are you trying to add an extra variable that further complicates the process? Just do what your body actually wants to do. You feel it, don't you? You train hard. You're increasing those loads. You're heavier. Your appetite increases. Come on, man. You're holding yourself back with all these dietary restrictions. And on that note, I want to bring you to the final point of this video. There's a good reason why most bulkers don't become obese. At some point, your body weight will stabilize itself. You'll be in a similar fluffy zone that can actually be played around with a bit. That can be 181 to 185, where it doesn't matter if you're not in a daily calorie surplus. The fact you have all these extra reserves in allows you to somewhat recomp in that fluffier state. So that's where maintaining is actually possible and potentially advised. You have to bulk first to reap the rewards off it. So I don't want any of you to think that this is a contradiction to what I said earlier. There's a massive difference in trying to maintain at 8 to 10% body fat versus 15 to 20% body fat, or just 18 to 20. Whenever you're in a fluffier state, diet tends to be a little bit less of a concern. You can get away with not having perfection or being in a surplus every single week. Just to say, I've been a similar weight for the last 3 months. I get a little bit heavier here and there, but there's also some fluctuations. Like, I actually lost 2 pounds recently, but there's no differences in size, performance, or energy. Why? Because I'm over 30 pounds heavier than what I should be weighing. Does that make sense? Recomping gains are not equal between someone who's underweight versus slightly overweight for their frame. And that's all I'm trying to say. The fluffier you are, the more you can get away with this. Now, this is not to suggest that you should be in a maintenance phase once you hit that peak, but just know that you can play around with the variables a little bit more. You don't have to be as strict. Like, you can actually enjoy your life more. Diet is no longer the number one driving factor. Whereas if you're still really lean, you obviously have to be way more meticulous. And even then, the gains aren't going to be as good. It's a psychological break of sorts. And it's nice knowing that you don't have to put on way more fat to keep getting the same amount of muscle gains. So with that said, I got nothing more to say about bulking. Now I want to hear your feedback in the comments section. Do you agree with some of the points I raised? And what's your experience been like with gaining weight? Let's hear it. And I'll talk to you all next time.